Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today is Wednesday, December 5th, 2012. I'm going to cover a bunch of different news today, just a lot of different news. I don't know any other way to explain it. Just articles that basically I couldn't get to, or eugenics, eco-terrorism, surveillance, police state, and of course social engineering or eugenics. Extreme weather, the new normal, says the UN chief. So I guess if the extreme weather is a new normal, then it's not really extreme anymore, right? But this is what they're going to tell you because, well, they're modifying the weather. You could say, well, who is it? Well, it's a whole collaboration of interest, including national laboratories, universities, military. So it's hard to point your finger at one particular group, but it is being done. All you have to do is look up. All you have to do is pay attention to the weather patterns, and you can see it as clear as day. So it's actually man-made climate change. The only problem is that it's man blaming other men for basically breathing and for driving their cars for the weather, while at the same time denying the fact that they're spraying aerosols daily on a global basis, modifying the weather, along with using other types of things such as HARP, basically heating up the ionosphere, cooking it. But this is like what they like to tell the people so that they can feel guilty, so that they say, well, what can we do about it? Well, according to the Club of Rome document, they say, well, let's just go ahead and say that man is the cause of all the climate change, and therefore we could basically declare war on the human, on man, causing climate change. And they offer their solution, which is a carbon tax. The Council on Foreign Relations pushes end to sovereignty at the UN's Doha Climate Summit in Qatar in its second week, headed for completion Friday, December 7th. Most analysts and observers expect little in the way of major developments or breakthrough agreements to come out of it. With the world economy in shambles and nearly all national governments awash in debt, there's a diminishing incentive for politicians to spend scarce public funds on much hyped hypothetical future threats posed by global warming, or now they call it climate change. They changed it, especially when there are very real, tangible issues demanding immediate attention and funding. I never really thought about it before like this, but they're talking about how they found that climate alarmists had received $50 billion since 1990. Well, there's some people that throw out the number of 1996 was the first year they started spraying massively, and that could have been it. I wasn't paying attention because I wasn't aware of it till 2008. But I know it was going on way before that because you can see it in shows and movies. But what I was getting to was that the money that goes towards fighting climate change, could it actually be used for funding all of these nanoparticles and aerosols and HARP type technology, i.e. the weather modification, or what we know as chemtrails, is actually being funded in order to fight climate change, which causes the warming and climate change. But it's about a tax to fund global governance, as they call it. Paris weighs ban to darken city of lights. The world would require lights off between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. Says here France's Minister for Energy and Environment would ban lights in and around stores and other public buildings from 1 to 7 a.m. It's an energy savings ban. Like everything else with eco-terrorists and eco-fascists, the merchants, the people that are going to be affected by this, the business owners, are not happy. Merchants are also concerned it will hurt tourism. And it also says that Paris churches, statues, fountains, bridges, monuments, including the Eiffel Tower, already turn their lights off at 1 a.m. Next up, we have gross national happiness in Bhutan. I've covered this before when it first came out, this study, but it says the country measures prosperity by gauging its citizens' happiness levels, not the GDP. Now, its ideas are attracting interest at the UN Climate Change Conference in Doha. So not a very big surprise that they're going to say, well, go ahead and decrease your standard of living in the name of saving the climate, and we'll just measure it by happiness and not really GDP, how much you guys are producing and stuff like that. They call it the gross national happiness system. So this would be really, really good in a life of, basically a culture where they're trying to push this green terrorism and sustainability, which means reducing the population, genetically modifying humans and animals to fit their lifestyle, which is basically it's a few elite that want to basically have everything for themselves and barely anything for you. And there's nothing wrong with not wanting a lot of things and being materialistic. I mean, that's a rarity in this type society of consumerism. But these people like Edward Bernays and Freud and all of them, all of that has been studied by these people, and they're very intelligent, and they know how to exploit that feeling, that consensus. Which is why, like I said before, you have the Prince Charles or whatever in the UK and England basically telling citizens in America to stop eating beef while he himself has his own Angus organic beef farms. Bush wades into immigration debate and says immigrants invigorate our soul. Says not only do immigrants help build the economy, they invigorate our soul. So, and this is coming from a so-called conservative. And you can be rest assured that Mitt Romney would have been saying the same things. Internet, but he could also say it invigorates our pocketbooks or our expenses or overhead, as businesses call it, because they like cheap labor. Let's not shit a shitter here. So internet hangs in balance as world governments meet in secret. There's a lot of sky is falling doomsday predictions about the World Conference in International Telecommunications, which opens Monday in Dubai with some 190 nations discussing the global internet's future. Says much of the proposals from the global community. I like that. Isn't that awesome to the global community? Are you part of that? I mean, we're global citizens. That's what we're told, right? I mean, when did you get a chance to vote on this? Well, we don't. So it's engineered consent. It's part of this mass democracy. It says here, have been kept under lock and key, although, see, under lock and key, that's what they consider democracy. Although some of the positions of the nations have been leaked and published online. That's basically just garbage that's leaked to the people and even alternative media and that, so they can go out there and say, well, this and that, right? Basically, they let you know what they want you to know. The idea behind the meetings is for the international telecommunication regulations governed by the International Telecommunications Union, a United Nations agency. They also have an agency for population too, known as the ITU, that is responsible for global communication technologies. So they go over in there and give a bunch of reasons as to why, oh, don't worry, you're just overreacting. I mean, national governments can already censor if they want. And the last time the ITR Global Treaty was considered was in 1988, but technology has changed dramatically in the past 25 years. So the fact is, I mean, everybody can see it, is that the internet needs to be regulated for the flow of information. There can't be a free flow of information. You can't have opposing, uncontrolled opposition sources or entities out there speaking truth, right? That's a big danger in this mass democracy, brave new world. But it'll be like everything else. It'll be in the name of security and protecting the children and protecting internet fraud from happening. It says here that this Theresa May says internet bill critics putting politics before lives. The Home Secretary of England, I think, has warned that the opposing plans to let police monitor all internet use are putting politics before people's lives. The communications data bill would mean internet providers have to retain records of all their customers' online activity for 12 months. It says it would help police tackle serious organized crime like the governments themselves, pedophiles like people at BBC, and terrorists like the governments. Next up, we have U.S. Senate kills UN treaty that could have expanded abortion. It says the U.S. Senate has voted down a treaty that opponents warn could widen acceptance of abortion, deny the parents of special needs children their rights, and compromise U.S. sovereignty. It was called the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, failed to be ratified after a 61-38 vote. The bill or treaty called on nations to furnish the disabled free or affordable health care, including the area of sexual and reproductive health and population-based public health programs. Pro-life leaders warned that the language could be interpreted to include abortion, as it could in the case of other UN treaties. And I really only covered this issue, because it falls under global government. Came across this article recently. It says, campaign for a United Nations Parliamentary Assembly. So this, of course, is the global government, and giving the world's citizens a voice. That's because you're a citizen of the planet. A manifesto, so it sounds very democratic and un-Marxist, un-communist, for global democracy, and proposal for a UN Parliamentary Assembly presented. So this global democracy and UN Parliamentary Assembly really is a front for corporations that are the real countries, the corporations. and the rich entities like Rothschilds there's all these other families that most of us have never heard of, and they have a lot of controlling interests in these corporations. But it's a great scam though, because with corporations, no one's really responsible for the things that they do. It's all about profit. So human atrocities that are carried out and effects on humans, they really have no interest in that, and they're not responsible for it either. So it's great for them. Good system. But yeah, so eventually what they're going to do is this is going to override sovereign governments. They keep saying that it's not like the UN bill with the internet bill. That's a good example of how they water it down for people's concerns, which people have legitimate concerns. They should be concerned. They should be screaming bloody murder about this shit. It's not a game. I mean, while people are hard at work, working harder, longer for less, these a-holes, these, quote, intellectuals and experts and businessmen, international fascists and eugenicists, they're sitting there plotting the demise of your future, of your children, of our way of life. And like I said before, the way to describe it is they do it and they sit there and drink Evian and their own little special water, and they got their nice organic food delivered to them, and they're raised in different schools, completely different lifestyle. They know that it's not a democracy. They probably laugh when they talk about that, when people talk about democracy and spreading it. They have PowerPoint presentations, and they do statistics and research on how much them effing with you is actually being, how effective it really is. They got it down to a science. That's why I call it scientific dictatorship. You have super rich family bankers want no role for democracy. Says this is American author Dean Henderson from Veterans Today, says the country's super rich, including the family bankers, prefer a medieval situation where private cartels rule the world with no room left for democracy or government. So it says here that most of the 8 family bankers in the U.S. have been printing money out of nothing since last century, and now they want the middle class and poor to make more sacrifice. Said they're doing the same thing in Europe as far as the method to, quote, solve the crisis. They're trying to impose austerity measures by using this phony thing they call a fiscal cliff.
While the British abandoned propaganda in peacetime, the Americans maintained its use under the leadership of Creel Commission psychologist Edward Bernays, who argued that American public opinion must be engineered from above by society's viewmasters. The business world then turned to Bernays to indoctrinate citizens with the capitalist story until the masses willingly adopted the idea that America is a country of big business, by big business, and for big business. Fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism, because it is a merger of state and corporate power.
So this is an article I came across, Council on Foreign Relations, and it ties in with that video we were just talking about, where they basically propagandize people, brainwash the masses in America to believe that we're all about big business. And in this article, the case for U.S. multinationals, an actual CEO for Chevron makes the case that, it's talking about business and foreign policy. Basically, these businesses write the foreign policy. They want to increase the connection between business and foreign policy. So when you go and fight wars, you're fighting for the drug wars, you're fighting for corporations, banks. He admits that this is at a time when this country, big business, is not held in particularly high regard, especially big oil, by the public and by the government. The speech is actually translated to or transcribed to an article. It goes on and says how great globalization has been, and basically it goes on and says that the military and the country itself has less influence in the world than they did in the past, mostly because what? Because of all the things that they've done, the rape and pillaging the American people's names. But then this the CEO for Chevron says, we have the ethics, we have practices, we have the hiring, training. He says the U.S. still has a large piece of the world economy, but that number is shrinking. He says the opportunities are big overseas, but the competition is tough. So I mentioned this before about how jobs will eventually come back. I said this back in 2009, 2010 to America when they got a bunch of desperate Americans ready to work for, like back in the industrial age revolution, which makes sense. Now there's an insourcing boom. Return with this article in part 2. The biggest caveat that's not mentioned about this alleged insourcing boom is that some companies will be looking to gain the benefits of manufacturing in the U.S., but using robotic labor to do it. This is after they crushed labor unions and put them on a lower wage. Thank you.